She closed her eyes and whispered in her heart, "Ancestors, give me strength." Before dawn's approach finally ushered in a fitful slumber. The very next day, as the sun climbed towards its zenith, the palace of Obaha was abuzz with uneasy activity. Word had spread that Queen Olama's condition had worsened, and the king, pressed by his council, had agreed to let the chief priest perform final rites. A public announcement was made. The queen was to be declared dead, and a brief ceremonial gathering would take place in the palace courtyard so that the people might bid farewell before a swift burial, for the death of royalty under unnatural circumstances demanded quick interment according to custom. Ozioma had this news whispered among the servants early that morning. Her heart pounded. They were going to bury an empty coffin, or worse, a murdered queen. This was the moment to act. She couldn't wait any longer, or the conspirators would permanently silence the truth. Around midday, the palace courtyard filled with people, nobles, attendants, guards, and a few common villagers who were allowed entry to witness the solemn event. A wooden coffin, draped in white cloth, sat on a raised platform. King Ezapata stood beside it, flanked by Prince Obiora and Chief Priest Anozie, both wearing convincing masks of sorrow. Some elders and the king's personal guards formed a semicircle. The air was thick with grief and incense from the priest's censer, but also with an undercurrent of anxiety. Hidden among the gathered servants at the back, Ozioma, still dressed as Uzondo, waited, palms sweaty, heart thumping into a drum. Under her cap, her shaved head felt cool, and a resolve like steel steadied her. This has to end now. Chief Priest Anozie raised his hands, signaling for quiet. In a mournful voice, he began, "O gods of our ancestors, today we gather with heavy hearts to commit Queen Olama's spirit to your care. Though she was with us but a short time, her light touched." As Anozie droned on, Ozioma's eyes darted. Two guards stood at the courtyard edge by the archway leading towards the shrine. Through that arch lay the path to the inner sanctum where Ozioma suspected the real Queen Olama might still be unconscious and hidden. She had to get those guards away and retrieve the queen before this ceremony concluded, or reveal the deception another way. She had prepared for a possible distraction. Just behind that archway, earlier in the morning, she had stowed a clay pot of palm oil and another of dried chili pepper from the kitchen stores, now or never. Ozioma slipped away from the servants' cluster, moving quietly along the periphery of the courtyard. All eyes were on the priest and coffin. As they intoned prayers, the two guards by the shrine entrance were solemn, but attentive only to the ceremony, not expecting trouble from behind. Taking a deep breath, Ozioma crept up behind them. In one swift motion, she hurled the pot of oil forward. It crashed to the ground a few paces ahead, oil spreading in a sleek pool. Startled, the guards instinctively stepped forward. In that moment, Ozioma flung a handful of powdered chili from the other pot directly in their faces. A fairy cloud of spice engulfed the guards. They staggered and yelped, dropping their spears as the chili burned their eyes. "Ah, my eyes!" one cried, doubling over. The other stumbled blindly, tripping on the spilled oil and crashing to the ground. Gasps and commotion erupted from the crowd at the unexpected disturbance. King Ezapata turned, confusion and anger on his face. Prince Obiora's eyes narrowed as he spotted the small figure standing by the archway, Uzondo, the mute servant boy with a clay pot in hand. "What is the meaning of this?" the king thundered. Ozioma stepped forward, her heart racing but her voice clear and steady, amplified by righteous anger. "It means, Your Majesty, that this funeral is a lie," she shouted. A collective shock rippled through the assembly. The mute boy spoke. Servants exchanged bewildered looks. A noble woman actually dropped the fan she was holding. All attention swung to the ragged kitchen boy who had suddenly found his tongue. Prince Obiora recovered first. "Seize that boy," he barked. His face twisted in fury. Two guards rushed towards Ozioma. But Ozioma had already darted through the archway, deeper towards the shrine. She knew she had scant seconds. Behind her, she had King Ezabata shouting for an explanation and the ceremony unraveling into chaos. As she sprinted down the short corridor, she yanked off the knit cap that covered her head, and with it, the identity of Ozondu. She would no longer hide. Ozioma burst into the dimly lit shrine that adjoined the chief priest's quarters, and there, laid on a woven mat and draped in royal shawls, was Queen Olamma. The queen's face was pale and her eyes closed, but her chest rose and fell shallowly. She was alive, just as Ozioma knew. Beside her, on a low table, was scattered bowls of herbs and a small vial containing an ominous dark liquid, likely the portion that had kept her in this death-like state. Summoning all her strength, Ozioma knelt and gently shook the queen. "Your Highness, Queen Olamma, wake up," she urged in a fierce whisper. Queen Olamma's eyelids fluttered, her lashes were wet, as if she had been crying in whatever semi-conscious state she was trapped. At the sound of her name, her brow creased and she moaned softly. Outside, heavy footsteps and shouts drew closer. The guards were coming. Ozioma leaned down and spoke urgently into the queen's ear, hoping some part of her could hear. "Queen Olamma, you must get up now. They're about to bury an empty coffin and keep you a prisoner or worse. My mother Ekperamaka died because of this plot. If you have any strength, please stand up. Come with me. Prove to everyone that my mother was innocent and that you are still alive." Perhaps it was the familiar name, Ekperamaka, that pierced through the fog in the queen's mind. Or perhaps the ancestors gave a push, but Olamma's eyes suddenly opened a silver. Her once bright, now dull brown eyes met Ozioma's. Her voice came out in a weak croak. "The cook's daughter?" There was no time for delicacy. Ozioma nodded briskly. "Yes, I'm Ozioma, and I'm here to save you. And with you, save us all. Can you stand?" Queen Olamma swallowed and struggled to prop herself on her elbows. She was weak but conscious. I think so," she whispered. Ozioma slipped her shoulder under the queen's arms to support her. With great effort, Olamma rose, draping an arm around the smaller girl for balance. The queen swayed, her knees barely holding. Ozioma grit her teeth and supported as much of the taller woman's weight as she could. At that moment, two palace guards charged into the chamber, spears at the ready. They stopped in their tracks, eyes widening at the sight. The queen, presumed dead, standing grudgingly with the help of the cook's young daughter, who was supposed to be a mute boy. The confusion gave Ozioma the precious seconds she needed. Drawing on adrenaline, Ozioma half fled, half dragged Queen Olamma forward. The guards stammered, unsure whether to attack or not. King Ezabata's voice came booming from the corridor behind them. "Out of my way!" He burst into the shrine chamber, followed closely by Prince Obiora, Chief Priest Anozie, and a throng of others who had abandoned the funeral in uproar. The king froze at the threshold, eyes fixed on the figure of his wife. "Olamma," he breathed, as if he couldn't trust his own eyes. Queen Olamma lifted her head at the sound of her name spoken by the king. With Ozioma still steadying her, she managed to stand a bit straighter. "Yes, I live, Ezabata," she said weakly. A thunderstruck silence fell. One could hear the rustling of ropes and the crackle of a torch on the wall. Prince Obiora's face had gone pale. Anozie looked like a statue, beads of sweat gathering on his bowed head. King Ezabata took one step forward, then another. He looked as if he might cry or explode or both. "How? What treachery is this?" His voice trembled with a mix of joy and fury. "They told me. I watched you." He could not even form the words. Before anyone else could speak, Ozioma raised her voice, steady and clear, addressing all assembled. "The king, the courtiers, the guards, and the conspirators. This is the truth, your majesty. Everyone, Queen Olama was never dead. She was made to appear dead by a forbidden herb, a potion given to her with the help of the chief priest and Prince Obiora. All eyes turned to Chief Priest Anozie and the prince in shock. Anozie spluttered, "Lies! The word of a maid servant means nothing." But Ozioma was far from finished. She pointed an accusing finger at them. They conspired with the queen in the beginning because she did not wish to remain in a marriage she never chose. Queen Olama wanted to escape the palace. She took a poison that mimics death to flee. A ripple of astonishment passed through the crowd. Queen Olama winced, shame crossing her face. King Ezabata looked as if he had been struck. Ozioma continued relentlessly, voice rising. But that's not all. To cover up their scheme, they blamed the poison on an innocent woman, Ekpere Amaka, the head cook, my mother. They accused her of murdering the queen and executed for it. Her voice shook at the memory, but she pressed on. My mother died crying her innocence, and here stands the proof. The queen lives, and no deadly poison ever touched her, only a sleeping draught that these traitors used. Gasps and cries of outrage came from the onlookers now. Some guards looked at Prince Obiora in disbelief. A few of the elders murmured prayers, horrified that such sacrilege had occurred. Prince Obiora found his tongue, stepping forward with a dramatic snarl. The girl is raving. The shock of her mother's misdeed has driven her mad. Guards, take her and that impostor down. He pointed to Ozioma and Olama, attempting to regain control. But King Ezabata held up his hand sharply. Nobody moves, he commanded, his voice deadly quiet. His gaze bore into Obiora, then Anozie. I want to hear what Queen Olama has to say about these accusations. All eyes turned to the frail queen. Ozioma gently eased her down to sit on a stone as her legs were trembling. Olama looked up at her husband, the man she had never truly wanted to marry, yet who stood there now, heartbreak and hope in his eyes. Tears slipped from the queen's eyes. It is true, she whispered, then louder for all to hear. All of it is true. A collective gasp rose. Obiora staggered back as if struck. Olama, what are you saying? Olama drew a shuddering breath. I am so sorry, Ezabata, she said, voice breaking. I wronged you. I wronged our people, and I wronged the one person who should have been the safest in our kitchen. She turned her face toward Ozioma, tears flowing freely now. Your mother trusted me, and I let them sacrifice her. Chief Priest Anozie, seeing the tide turning, tried to slip away, but a pair of guards barred his path. Spears crossed. The crowd's mood was shifting from confusion to anger as the truth sank in. King Ezabata's face went through a storm of emotions. Relief that his wife lived, betrayal at her words, grief for what was done, and a growing rage toward those responsible for this nightmare. Explain, Olama, he said in a dangerous calm, though his hand shook on the hilt of his sheathed sword. Tell me everything, by the gods I command it. Queen Olama bowed her head, as if the weight of her guilt made it impossible to meet his eyes. I was a coward, she began softly. I should have spoken to you, but fear drove me. I never wanted to be queen. Our marriage was arranged. I felt like a bird trapped in a gilded cage. I wanted to escape at any cost, she swallowed. I confided in Priest Anozie my despair. He and Prince Obiora, they offered me a way out, a portion that would make me appear dead, so I could flee the palace quietly after my death and start anew somewhere far. Murmurs of astonishment and dismay rippled through the listeners. King Ezabata looked stricken, but he motioned for her to continue. I agreed to it, Olama said, voice quavering. It seemed the only way. I drank the potion in my soup that night, knowing it would slow my heart and breathing. But I did not know. Her voice cracked. I did not know they planned to pin it on Ekpere Amaka. I thought I was foolish. I thought they would assume I fell ill and died. Instead, When I woke in a secret chamber after the portion wore off, Anozie told me that the cook had been executed for poisoning me. A low growl came from King Ezabata's throat, and his eyes flashed towards Priest and Obiora. The prince was edging away, sweat on his brow. Olamma wept openly now. I never meant for the loyal woman to be harmed. I swear it. I wanted to reveal myself then to stop it, but they told me it was too late. That if I revealed myself, I would be admitting to treason and sorcery, that I would be put to death, and so would anyone involved. I was a coward, she repeated bitterly. I stayed hidden, hoping maybe in exile I could at least pray for her soul, but they betrayed me too. They kept me under that sleeping draught longer than necessary. I realized they had their own plans. Ozioma gently squeezed Olamma's hand in solidarity. The queen had spoken the truth, enough to damn the guilty and exonerate the innocents. Guards! King Ezabata's voice rang like a blade. Arrest Prince Obiora and Chief Priest Anozie. Disarm them. If they resist, cut them down. No, I'm your brother Ezabata, Obiora shouted, drawing a dagger from his belt in desperation. He lunged towards the king. Whether to attack or to plead was unclear, but he never reached Ezabata. A swift-moving guard, none other than Okeke, who had shown kindness before, intercepted the prince, knocking the dagger aside and tackling Obiora to the ground. Other guards swarmed in, wrenching the struggling prince's arms back. Anozie attempted to mutter a quick spell, perhaps a cause or distraction, but another guard clotted him hard on the side of the head with a spear butt. The priest crumbled to his knees, his ceremonial cap trembling off, beads scattering. In moments, both conspirators were restrained, Obiora hollering in indignation and Anozie groaning in pain. The courtyard erupted in an uproar, people shouting accusations at the prince and priest, others crying in relief or shock that the queen was alive. Some servants rushed forward to embrace Ozioma, only to halt, unsure if it was appropriate in the king's presence. King Ezabata approached his brother slowly. Disbelief and fury etched on his face. Obiora, how could you? He said quietly, eyes burning. You were my blood, my trusted advisor. Prince Obiora, now on his knees with wrists bound, looked up with a twisted scorn. I did it for the kingdom, he spat. You have no heir. A prophecy said you would be replaced by someone from the kitchen, lowborn and unworthy. I was trying to protect our line, our legacy. Everything I did was for yourself, Ezabata finished coldly. You used the prophecy as an excuse for your own ambition, and you murdered an innocent woman for it. My hands carry her blood now because I listened to you. His voice cracked with anguish and anger. Ezabata then turned to the priest. And you, Anozie, sworn to serve the gods and uphold justice. What did they promise you for your part in this? Power? Influence? How many lies have you spoken in the gods' name? Anozie, holding a bleeding gash on his temple, bowed his head and said hoarsely, Too many. I have no excuse, my king. Perhaps he knew it was over and sought some dignity in silence. The king looked as if he might strike them down himself, but then his gaze caught Ozioma standing protectively near Queen Olamma. The girl's chin was raised defiantly, yet her eyes were full of tears for her mother. It was as if seeing her cooled the fire in Ezabata slightly, replacing some of his wrath with regret and sorrow. Ezabata strode to Ozioma and to everyone's surprise dropped to one knee before her. Here was the king of Ubaha, bowing his head to a servant's daughter in front of his court. Ozioma, he said, voice heavy with remorse. I cannot undo the grievous wrong I did to you and your mother. I was blind with grief and allowed injustice to triumph. Your mother served me faithfully, and he closed his eyes, pain etched on his features. I failed her. I spilled innocent blood. Tears finally escaped Ozioma's eyes, but she shook her head. It was them. she whispered, pointing to Obiora and Anozie. They orchestrated it all. But yes, Your Majesty, you signed the order. You. Her voice broke. The weight of speaking so boldly to the king hitting her. You killed my mother, she finished softly. A collective hush fell. The king flinched as if struck by an arrow, each word piercing him with guilt. Whispers rustled through the crowd. Servants and nobles alike looked down, uncomfortable with the raw truth laid bare. I know, King Ezabata said, tears in his own eyes now, and I will carry that shame to my grave. No words can redeem what I have done, but I swear to you, by the gods and my ancestors, your mother's name will be cleared and honored from this day forth. Obaha would know she died innocent, a victim of foul conspiracy. And you, child, you have done what the greatest warriors and wisest elders could not. You uncovered the truth and saved your king and queen from ruin. He slowly rose and then gently placed a hand on Ozioma's shoulder. Your courage would put heroes of legend to shame. Ozioma bowed her head, overcome. The weight of all that had happened, her mother's death, her days in disguise, the terror of confronting powerful men, now crashed upon her in a wave. But along with grief, she finally felt vindication. She had fulfilled her promise to her mother. Suddenly, a cry of jubilation went up from someone in the crowd, followed by others. One of the palace elders stepped forward, raising his staff. Praise to the gods! The evil has been purged from our land. Another courtier shouted, Ekperemaka's spirit can rest at last. Her daughter has restored her honor. At this, a number of villagers and servants, including those who had scorned Ozioma earlier, dropped to their knees towards her and the queen in apology and respect. The fish seller woman who had spat at Ozioma after the execution now openly wept. Forgive us, child. We did not know. Forgive our blindness. Ozioma looked around at the throng, bowing and cheering. It was dizzying and overwhelming. She had been so alone, so reviled just days ago, and now she was being held. Queen Olanma, still weak but determined, spoke up from her seat. All honor to Ozioma, she said, her voice clearer now. She's the true hero of this day. If not for her bravery and tenacity, I would still be a prisoner of my own cowardice and this man's treachery. I owe her my life and my soul's redemption. King Ezabata helped Olama stand, and though his face was stared with lingering hurt, he supported her gently. Together they faced the people. The king declared, Let it be known from this day forward, Ekperemaka is cleared of all wrongdoing. She shall be given a royal honor, even after her death, for her years of loyal service. And her remains, if buried without honor, will be reinterred with the highest respect due to one who served the crown so faithfully. Ozioma closed her eyes in gratitude, a tear rolling down her cheek. That was all she wanted, to leave the stain of her mother's name. But Ezabata wasn't finished. He turned to Ozioma and, taking a deep breath, announced, As for Ozioma, the daughter of Ekperemaka, the prophecy spoke of a true ruler coming from the kitchen. Today, Emeku's child has proven to have the heart of a ruler. She protected the king from terrible fate when those born to power schemed against it. I have no offspring of my own. If the people and the gods will it, let this prophecy be fulfilled in a way none expected. He placed a firm hand on Ozioma's shoulder and proclaimed, I hereby decree Ozioma to be under the protection of the crown. She shall dwell in this palace no longer as a servant, but as my ward and member of my household. A stunned silence, then an eruption of cheers. Many villagers hooted in approval. Servants beamed with pride for one of their own. Some nobles were wide-eyed and stiff, not quite sure how to react to a commoner being effectively adopted into the royal family. But in the wave of emotion and relief, none raised a word of protest. Ozioma herself stared at the king in disbelief. She hadn't expected or sought any personal reward. Clearing her mother's name was all she wished. Your Majesty, I don't know what to say, she stammered. King Ezabata managed a small sad smile. Say you accept, brave one. The palace owes you a debt. I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. Let me do this, at least, to help you forge a new life out of the ashes of the old. Ozioma thought then of her mother's last words. Continue your journey, my child, and let no one tell you who you are. Here she was, free to shape her destiny. She glanced at the sky, silently thanking her mother's spirit. Then she kneeled briefly before the king and queen, not as a servant, but respectfully as one who accepted this charge. I accept, she said, voice clear. A smile broke through the tears on Queen Olama's face. King Ezabata nodded, pulling Ozioma gently to her feet. As the sun dipped toward late afternoon, the courtyard that had been a place of mourning transformed into a scene of celebration. The truth had been unveiled. Justice was being served. And a prophecy had found an unexpected fulfillment. A ruler from the kitchen, though not through violent coup as feared, but through courage, truth, and honor. Prince Obiora and Chief Priest Anozie were led away in chains to await formal judgment. Many suspected the king's mercy would be thin. The best they could hope for was exile, if not execution for their crimes. The empty coffin meant for Queen Olama was discarded. Her return to life erased the need for any funeral. Instead, people sang praises to the gods for restoring balance. Some even broke into an impromptu dance, as if it were a festival day. Through it all, Ozioma stayed close to Queen Olama, ensuring the still fragile woman was supported. Surprisingly, the queen held Ozioma's hand with a grateful, gentle grip, as if unwilling to let her young savior out of reach. 2 days later, under the shade of a great Odala tree in Oba's royal grove, a small solemn reburial ceremony was held. King Ezabata himself, along with Ozioma, Queen Olama, and a handful of elders and former kitchen staff, gathered around a fresh grave marked with white stones and fragrant otter flowers. Ekperamaka's remains, history buried without honor before, had been taken from her lonely grave and now lay in a new coffin carved with care. The king had insisted on giving her a burial fit for someone of high honor. As the midday sun filtered through the leaves, the king spoke in a low, reverent tone. Ekperamaka, you served us well and suffered unjustly. May your soul find peace among our ancestors. We are forever sorry and forever grateful. Ozioma stepped forward, holding a smooth stone, with which she had inscribed a simple message. Truth never dies. She placed it on her mother's grave marker. Tears glistened in her eyes, but they were no longer solemn or sorrow. They were of pride and closure. She whispered, I did it, Mama. Your name is clear now. Rest well in him. Queen Olama, standing beside Ozioma, added softly, Ekperamaka, I owe you and your daughter my life. I will never forget your kindness to me when I first came to this palace. I pray you know that I never wished you harm. She bowed her head, and Ozioma squeezed the queen's hand in acceptance of her remorse. As the last spade of earth was patted down and the grave decorated with flowers, the group began to disperse quietly, each paying respect in their own way. King Ezabata lingered to speak privately with Ozioma. There will be a public feast tomorrow, he said, to celebrate the truth and to honor you and your mother. I wanted your blessing on that, as it concerns her memory. Ozioma nodded. Thank you, Your Majesty. My mother loved cooking feast for others. It's a fitting way to remember her. She gave a small sad smile. The king gently placed a royal necklace, one Queen Olama had chosen, around Ozioma's neck. It glimmered with bronze and beads. You are part of our family now, he said. Wear this as a sign of your new status. But I know it won't change who you are inside. Brave, kind, and true. The palace will learn from these mistakes. I will learn from my mistakes. Ozioma felt the weight of the necklace and the weight of the king's words. She bowed. I will do my best to live up to this honor, Igwe. Calling him king in Igbo felt more personal, and he acknowledged it with a gentle pat on her shoulder. The next day's feast was everything Ekperamaka would have loved. Lively music, the laughter of reunited friends, and tables groaning under delicious dishes. Some recipes of which Ozioma herself passed on to the new cooks. Villagers and nobles alike attended, all differences momentarily forgotten in the shared relief and joy. They sang songs of heroes, and amongst them was a new song about the cook's last daughter, who saved the kingdom with nothing but her wit and courage. Throughout the celebration, Ozioma stayed by the king and queen's side as an honored guest, not a servant. It felt strange at first. She kept instinctively wanting to help serve food or clear plates, but each time someone would politely insist, "No, Ozioma, please sit, enjoy." It was both unsettling and touching. Many came to shake her hand or bow to her. The guard, Okeke, thanked her for exposing those who had misled them all. The steward, Nwafo, chuckled that he knew there was something special about her when he first let her in. Even Chisom the cook apologized tearfully for not seeing through the lie that condemned her. Ozioma, with grace beyond her years, embraced each of them, offering forgiveness and warm words. She knew her mother would want no bitterness to linger. As dusk fell after the feast, Ozioma slipped away from the chatter to get a moment of quiet. She wandered into the now empty palace kitchen. The heart was cool, only embers glowing softly. She could almost see Ekperamaka bustling about, humming a tune, stirring pot as she used to. She closed her eyes and felt a gentle breeze, as if a presence was there. In her heart, she heard her mother's voice, full of pride. A depth may get moldy, but it never decays. Justice may come slowly, but it comes. You have done well, my daughter. Ozioma smiled, a tear rolling down her cheek. She whispered, I will love you always, Nem. That night, Ozioma slept in a comfortable chamber given to her in the palace, with clean linens and a soft mat, a far cry from the hard pantry floor. Yet she found herself staring at the moon outside her window for a long time, reflecting. So much had changed so quickly. She felt a pang of loneliness that her mother wasn't there to share this new life with her, but she took comfort that Ekperamaka's spirit was at peace. In the days and weeks that followed, Ozioma began her new chapter. Under the guidance of the king, she learned the ways of leadership, sitting in on council meetings, offering her perspective, which was often wise beyond her years. Queen Olama, having recovered and earnestly reconciled with the king, treated Ozioma like a beloved younger sister, even teaching her to read and write properly, as befitted a lady of the court. The people of Ubaha village looked at Ozioma with admiration whenever she walked among them. Children would wave excitedly. Parents would point her out, saying, There goes Ozioma, the brave one who taught us that even a slowy sparrow can save the mighty eagle. She always greeted them kindly, never forgetting where she came from. Despite her elevated position, Ozioma often spent time in the kitchen, not to work as before, but to remember her mother's roots and perhaps to sneak a taste of the simmering soup. She remained humble, helping the new cooks refine recipes or quietly delivering extra food to servants who were ill or hungry. The palace kitchen was no longer a place of pain for her, but a place of fond memory and ongoing care, a reminder that true strength can come from the warm, nourishing heart of a home. One evening, King Ezabata convened a small gathering in his throne room. He announced that the prophecy, once a sign of fear, had indeed come true, but not in the way anyone expected. The true strength of our kingdom came from the kitchen, from the loyalty and bravery found in ordinary folk, he declared. Let this be a lesson and legacy. Pride and power blinded us, but the honesty of a common girl saved us. And so the story of the cook's last daughter became legend in Obaha. Ozioma's name was sung by Groit aside ancient heroes. Mothers told their children to have integrity and courage like Ozioma. Fathers remarked that a good heart was worth more than a noble title. As for Ozioma herself, she lived each day guided by the values her mother instilled in her: humility, patience, and a steadfast commitment to truth. Her journey had taken her from a grieving girl on the street to a respected young woman in the palace. No one mocked her now or called her cursed. Those same villagers now called her Adora, the people's daughter, and some even dared to imagine that one day When King Ezabata's reign ended, perhaps Ozioma might become their queen. Stranger things had happened after all. On a quiet night, long after the upheaval had settled, Ozioma sat in the courtyard under the stars with Queen Olama. They chatted softly. Olama, teaching her an old lullaby, Ozioma asked gently, "My queen, what will you do now, truly? Do you regret staying?" Olama smiled sadly. "I regret the mistake and the hurt I caused, but I am grateful for a second chance. The king, Ezabata, has been kinder than I deserve in forgiving me. We are learning to trust each other anew, without lies this time. And I have you to thank for that. If you hadn't exposed everything, I would have lived in guilt and exile the rest of my life." Ozioma rested her hand on Olama's shoulder, surprising and pleasing the queen with the informal gesture. "We'll all have scars from this," Ozioma said, "but maybe together we can heal." Olama placed an arm around her. "Yes, together." They watched a shooting star streak across the sky. Olama added softly, "Your mother will be so proud of you, you know." "I hope so," Ozioma murmured, twirling her fingers. "I sometimes wonder if I'm doing the right thing with this new life." "You have the wisdom to know and the courage to act," Olama replied. "That's more than many born into royalty can claim." Ozioma gave a small laugh. "Who would have thought? A few weeks ago, I was scrubbing pots, thinking my life was over. Now, it feels like it's only beginning." Olama hugged the girl she had come to love like kin. "Destiny is funny like that. The part of life, the name Ozondo you choose suits you, can twist in ways no one expected." Ozioma smiled at the mention of that name Ozondo, the part of life indeed. Her path had been harsh and winding, but it led to a place of light. As the night deepened, Ozioma retired to her room. Before sleeping, she took out a small carving she had kept, one her mother had once given her, a turning wooden spoon, a symbol of the cook's trade. She placed it by her bedside next to a newly gifted silk scarf of royal design. Two words, her humble past and her promising future, side by side, and both were part of who she was. "Good night, Mama," she whispered, looking up at the ceiling as if to the heavens beyond. "I love you, Nem." She then added with a peaceful smile, "I will continue to make you proud. This I promise." And so ends the tale of the cook's last daughter, Ozioma of Obaha village. A girl who refused to accept the shame others placed on her, who disguised herself and walked in silence through danger, who listened and learned, and who, when the moment was right, found her voice to shatter the walls of lies. Her story reminds all that truth, like the sun, can be hidden by clouds but never extinguished, and that sometimes the greatest heroes rise from the most humble of places, even from a kitchen, with a stirring spoon in hand and an unbreakable spirit in the heart. The moral lesson of the cook's last daughter is that truth may be delayed, but it can never be buried forever. Lies, greed, and injustice may silence the innocent for a time, but courage and persistence will always bring light to what is hidden. Ozioma's bravery teaches us that even the most ordinary person, when armed with honesty and determination, can stand against powerful enemies and change the destiny of a whole kingdom. It reminds us never to judge too quickly, never to condemn without proof, and to remember that real strength comes from humility, loyalty, and the courage to speak the truth. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Ozioma on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with our journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.